case you missed it, it's the top 5 sports talkers of the day. Now, it's time for Dan Barreiro's Top 5 at 5. Brought to you by Gutter Helmet of Minnesota. Never clean your gutters again. Learn more at gutterhelmetmn.com.
Guardsy is reporting on the Red Hot Golden Gophers, who will be playing at Rutgers tomorrow morning on the Fan. Kickoff scheduled Central Time for just past 11 o'clock. Pre-game show will begin, I'm assuming, at 9. So in his stead, Brett Blakemore in charge of the Top 5 at 5.
Start with the Vikings injury report. A lot of names on there when you just peek at it. You're like, ooh, that's a lot of names. 4 of them are rest-related. 2 of them we know, Gilmore and the Hitman, vet rest. But then Bradbury's getting, he's on the list even though it's rest. And Van Ginkel on the list for rest as well, though he fully practiced Thursday and today. But the rest of the list, only 3 questionable players for your Vikings: Blake Cashman, Gabriel Murphy, and Ivan Pace Jr., despite them both, all 3 of them practicing with Murphy in a limited capacity.
It sounds like Jacksonville's a lot more banged up than we, and they can afford it a lot less than we can because they're not a very good football team either. And it, according to Gessling, he thinks there's a good chance we're going to see Cashman. I know one of the theories that's been advanced is, well, give him extra time. It's Jacksonville. I just don't think teams think that way. Now, if he's 47%, you don't put him out there, no matter who you're playing, to be honest. But it sounds as if there's a decent chance that you're going to get him back. And I think as soon as any player is healthy enough to go, you insert him. I don't care who you're playing.
Yeah, the Jags on the other side, 8 questionable players going in for Jacksonville. But the most important, obviously, Trevor Lawrence. I don't know when they're going to learn to not slide head first, these quarterbacks, because we got another one.
It's astonishing.
I was just watching SportsCenter during the break. I had him as questionable. Maybe he's limited all week, so he practiced all week. Meanwhile, I look up at the TV and unlikely to play despite the questionable, according to their reports.
Yeah,
so we're probably going to see Mac Jones.
A couple of the reporters who make it their business to break injury stories are suggesting it's beyond questionable, that he is unlikely to go, and maybe they're just playing this game thinking that it's part of the cat and mouse game, and it'll throw the Vikings defense off the track, and they'll have to prepare for 2 quarterbacks. I don't know. You should be able to beat either one of them. Jones did have a great game a couple years ago. Previous defense, not the current B-Flow defense. Close to, I think, well over 300 yards, if I'm not mistaken, and a couple of touchdowns in a game that the Vikings did win. So the way I would distinguish between the two at this point is that for Lawrence and a lot of the regular players, they already might be bored with the season because it's going the wrong way and nothing exciting has happened. But Jones might look at it as hey, I got a chance to play. I am excited. I'm going to try to make the most of it, whether it's to get the attention of another team for next season, that I'm worth a second shot as a starter, or maybe even here, you say I play well enough that they actually consider the possibility of acknowledging that Trevor Lawrence was nowhere near as good a quarterback as we all assumed he was going to be. But if you are on the right track, you're supposed to be able to realistically handle either one of them.
Time now for the obligatory Kevin Fallness Minnesota Wild mention.
Because we couldn't forget it. The Minnesota Wild last night.
No chance.
This is a game in the Shark Tank that's dead. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when the Shark Tank was pop. It was a tough place to play.
Yeah.
Now it's just completely dead. And maybe a game where the Wild of old, even a couple years ago, probably come out flat, don't really care about the game. We're just going to roll over them anyways. They actually did roll over them 5-2. The final 2 goals ruled out for offsides.
Were they legitimate
Could have been worse.
calls?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
I mean, if it goes to that, it's usually close, but didn't matter in the end. Kaprizov continues to roll. He has an unbelievable assist yet again, a blind pass. He is second in the league for points right now. The only person above him by 1 point is Nathan McKinnon. Number 2, Kirill Kaprizov.
Yeah, and, your guy was in net again, right, Flower?
He was.
He's been creditable this year, right? Yep. Wasn't the first game kind of scary?
A little bit.
Not the first one, but he is. Now, he hasn't played. Was this his 4th game?
Third or fourth.
So it's not like he's been the main guy by any means, but that part of it is important too. That he has enough left to where he can be your number 2 goalie. And as you say, we're all looking for these litmus tests. This might have been another one where you say this is one of those games that you might have messed around with. You might have played around with your food, which they have not done, and they continue to fashion a very, very good road record.
Yeah, they do. The problem is the team ahead of them in the Central Division, the Jets, are 13-1 this year. So the Wild will take second place in the Central right now. Other thing, too, with the game, grain of salt here because I briefly saw this online, so don't take it as literal, but as gospel. But I think it was the biggest age gap for a goal scorer against a goalie because Macklin Celebrini, who's 18, scored against Marc-Andre Fleury, who's 39.
That is a gap.
Yeah, that's a pretty sizable gap. Teams who did play with their food were your Timberwolves.
Early especially.
Essentially, they beat the Bulls in the fourth quarter alone. Final 135-119. But they played with their food.
They fourth quarter were very good. They scored either, it was a 45 or 47. You can look that up for me. I think it's the best scoring fourth quarter they've ever had. Offense was purring. There are, again, if you go not 5 deep, but 7 deep, your top 7 players, you got a lot of good potential here offensively. The problem was they were guarding nobody. And Edwards declared that after the game that it wasn't until really, as good as the offense was in the fourth quarter. And by the way, Rudy was very active, people finding him open. He was finishing effectively around the basket, which does not always happen with Rudy either. He did have some height edges there. But it was the defense. They in the fourth quarter, they finally played a representative quarter defensively. And so as much as we want to talk about all those points and that offensive explosion and how much they might be improved offensively with the changes that they have made, and adding DiVincenzo to the mix, and even Conley, by the way, the Wolves are in a back-to-back. They're back home against Portland. They've got 3. I think they play Portland like 3 times in the next week, which is bizarre because they got 2 in a row there. It's one of those scheduling quirks. And the one here tonight, Conley, a lot of people wondered, might he sit? My understanding is he does expect to play for this game. He's not going to sit. Second day of a back-to-back. Maybe they limit his minutes a bit. I'm not exactly sure. But the objective for the Wolves is going to be obviously improving the offense from a year ago, but not at the expense of the defense. And the defense has been very up and down, very spotty at times. And the Bulls were missing Zach LaVine, one of the balls as well. They're missing some people who can do some stuff offensively. So. It was a troubling performance until they did turn it on. And now I think what the head coach is looking for is give me at least flashes of the 10 minutes where we just say enough and we just take the heart out of the other team, because that's what they did in the postseason last year effectively. And you're seeing it, but it has to be sustained more than it has been to this point.
Last thing I got for you, you're not an elite fantasy football mind.
Not in the least. Not even close.
Well, some major history happened last night for Thursday Night Football because Jamar Chase, I know every league has their different scoring, and Abbott is texting me right now saying no one cares about your fantasy football league. But if you had Jamar Chase in my fantasy league,
right,
you would have had 62.9. Is that a lot? That's an unbelievable amount of points. An average for a receiver might be 15.
Who is the Ravens quarterback? Lamar Jackson?
He is.
I guess I had not paid. We talked about him extensively with Salisbury earlier. Have you seen his touchdown INT ratio? 24 touchdowns and 2 interceptions.
Jeez.
That's pretty good. And they're smart. They added the running back. He's made a big difference. He's in some ways taken the pressure off Jackson having to run. Jackson didn't run all that much last night, but was very effective. It was a very entertaining offensive game with 2 good quarterbacks. Speaking of quarterbacks, the Dallas Cowboys starting quarterback.
Yes.
You saw the note on him?
Mm-hmm.
What's his name?
Is Dak Prescott.
He is out now. The ESPN is reporting 6 to 8 weeks with I think people knew he was going to be out, but now I think we've got more information on how long he might be out. They're starting Cooper Rush, who beat us. You'll recall. Remember, he came in here and beat our asses is what he did. The Cowboys are a complete train wreck at this point.
Yeah. He is on the IR, so we don't know how long he'll be out.
Yeah.
We know at least the minimum of how he'll be out, which is those 4 games. That's top 5. That's 5.
Grand in your hand?
Grand in your hand time. The Fan and 2 men and a junk truck want to give you a shot. To put that grand in your hand at the National Cash Contest, head to KFAN.com And the keyword credits. The keyword credit, KFAN.com keyword credits.
Quickie segment coming up before we prepare for the indomitable one, Lavelle E. Neal III, Wobble Bingo. Wobble Bingo coming up at the bottom of the hour.
1, 2, 3.
Tune in 9 to noon every Tuesday as PA broadcasts live from TCO to talk all things purple. TCO Tuesdays are powered by Suck Up Manufacturing.
Something robbed me of my sleep.
We think Lavelle at 5:30. He's not responding right now to interim substitute producer Brett Blakemore, but I think we're going to assume the best. Don't you think that's fair?
Maybe he just doesn't like me.
Is there some bad blood?
Not as far as I know.
By the way, this is a callback to much, much earlier in the broadcast, but I might get a little snarky and sarcastic about the notion that switching back and forth between daylight saving time and standard time is allegedly this incredible challenge and labor that costs us $18 billion and is a health hazard, etc. I've tended to dismiss that position as, is it catastrophizing? I think that's the term for it. In a world in which there's plenty of that going on. And Texter wanted to get in on that subject out of the 612 area code. The people railing against the time change are morons. With year-round standard time, the sun would come up at 4 a.m. in June. With year-round daylight time, the sun would not come up until almost 9 a.m. in December. Neither outcome is palatable. The switch from standard time to daylight time and vice versa absolutely makes sense, especially in the northern states. Yeah, to me, this isn't a Rubik's Cube. This isn't tough. Even if philosophically you would prefer the idea of the clocks never change, well, but there's a reality that you're going to be having to deal with, and especially in the northern states, as he says. To me, it's the perfect combo platter, and most of us, I think, have figured out that the more you catastrophize over it, the more you agonize over it, the more you hyperventilate over it, the more likely it is going to bother you. And that it's under that classification of, okay, it's a nuisance that night. You either gain an hour or you lose an hour, and it's kind of annoying, but and then you got to worry about going all over the house and changing the clocks one way or the other. But that in the grand scheme of things, you have a much better chance of really not having much impact on your existence if you don't let it have that much impact on your existence. And I tend to agree with that as well. A story just as mindless that I had crossed my desk several weeks ago. Let's see if we can get a ruling on this from the Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line 64686 audience. There is apparently a new rule at, I don't know if it's every New Zealand airport or just one in particular, that limits curbside hugs to 3 minutes. And it's gotten, not surprisingly, a lot of reaction around the world. Now, a lot of shows wouldn't touch it. It's a controversial subject. It's a polarizing subject, one could say. But, and I have no idea, this falls into that classification of, like we talked about, all the new Halloween laws, and you can't, certain cities, you can't, if you have a mask and you're over 14, you can't trick or treat. It's like, okay, well, what is going to happen if you do? You're going to get arrested? Is it really going to be, you're going to call it citizen's arrest? You're actually going to call the cops, as if cops have enough time for this kind of nonsense in most places. This would be another one. It's like, well, how do you exactly enforce it? Now, on the other hand, at an airport, you could say it is enforceable to the extent that your job, if you're working the airport beat, especially where people drop folks off, is to keep the traffic moving, right? To keep the flow going where more and more people can get in and get out, et cetera. So to that extent, it would seem to me that it could get a little bit confusing because then you have a stopwatch. If you have like 7 cars stopped, do you need 7 stopwatches to know, like, well, that guy was already there a minute and a half. This guy's been there 4.5 minutes, et cetera. Because I actually think, as silly as it sounds, the 3-minute limit is not unreasonable. I don't actually think it is unreasonable because there are people who take the opportunity to, they make out. They turn it into a Wagnerian opera, and you say, well, that's your right, but maybe not necessarily your right if it's having an impact on a lot of other people. So where are we on the 3-minute farewell rule as an experiment, apparently in New Zealand? And if it catches on, could we see it coming to an airport near you? Because I have tended over my years of travel to believe that the rules are very inconsistent at major busy airports when it comes to dropping people off or picking them up. Well, mainly dropping them off because that's allegedly where the smooching is going to happen, although I guess it could happen when you're picking somebody up as well. That there's no rhyme or reason to it, that it depends on the individual cop. Maybe it depends on the airport from time to time, but there's some times where you could sit there forever, and there's other places where they're on you. They don't give you 3 minutes. They basically give you maybe 15 seconds for a peck on the cheek, and then it's like, get the hell out of here. You can talk to her later, get her on the phone later, whatever the case may be. So let me know if you relate to, at least in theory, what this New Zealand airport is attempting to accomplish.
I'll say this as someone who unfortunately childhood divorce, and one parent in Atlanta, one parent in Des Moines. I've been flying as an unaccompanied minor since I was in first grade. Yeah. So there's plenty of, thank God there wasn't any other stuff going on, but yes, there's been plenty of curbside hugs and goodbyes and stuff.
Yeah.
There is room for that, but I highly doubt even when I was in first grade, we approached 3 minutes. 3 minutes is a long time.
Well, and I would think actually when you're a kid that young, you might want it to last more than 3. The old deal.
100%.
Maybe it's an emotionally fraught moment, etc. Which is a completely different issue than obviously if it's a husband and wife and it's a couple or whatever the case may be. But I would think, I'd like to think that if cops have discretion, they are going to give kids like you described yourself back then actually a little bit more room if they're having some difficulty, separating, saying goodbye to their mom or dad that they're not going to see for a while.
Yeah, I agree with that. I just don't think, it's enforceable. I just don't know how they're going to do it. But to me, the pressure of, or maybe this is the Midwesterner in me, but the guilt of holding other people up would make me so uncomfortable that I'd have to just speed it up, just to get it going.
100%. One other quick aside. Well, actually, we're going to 6:30, right? I can save this. I can save this for after Lavelle, because I'm getting, how do I explain this? I'm getting the same text written 100 different ways from people I'm very worried about, because they have decided to attach certain emotion to how presumably I'm supposed to react to the election that I don't even have. But in their world of wanting to celebrate, in their world of Schadenfreude, they apparently need it. And they apparently need it more than I do, even though I've given them no reason to believe that I'm feeling the emotions that they need me to feel better about themselves. We'll get to it in more detail at 6. I would say the old, take your victory lap, man, but don't worry about, you don't need me to get brought in on what you need. And if you're going to bring me in, don't lie. Don't make stuff up either about what I've said or whatever emotion I've expressed, which hasn't, I don't think, include any late night tears since the election results took place. We'll leave that till 6 in more depth. Lavelle, we hope, is coming up.
The Prep Bowl is more than just a game. It's a celebration of Minnesota high school football. Don't miss the action, excitement, and drama on November 22nd and 23rd. Catch it all live on 45 TV or download the KSTP app on your streaming device and catch the action in person by heading to our contest page, registering for your chance to win 2 tickets to the games. KFAN.com, keyword contest.
I like this idea. We're getting some good ideas from the Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line audience in preparation for our next guest, Lavelle E. Neal III, kind enough to join us via the Connecticut Water Systems hotline, brought to you by our good friends, his good friends as well, at Allery's. You are quite the you've lived quite the swordsman life, so you might be a good person to run this by. I mentioned before you came on that according to the New York Times, there's a prominent airport, at least one in New Zealand, that has attempted to institute a new rule to help facilitate the drop-off point, traffic at the drop-off point for the airport. And the new rule they're experimenting with is you get no more than 3 minutes to say goodbye to whoever you've just dropped off, whether that's hugging, kissing, rubbing elbows, whatever the case may be. 3 minutes is the max. Now, do you find that a fair number? Do you say it should be actually shorter? It should be longer? What do you think about the 3 minute idea?
I think 3 minutes is long enough to get done whatever you're trying to accomplish, to be honest with you. I think it's very fair. I would actually argue that you make it shorter during rush hour periods, especially like between 6 and 9 a.m. and maybe 4 to 7 p.m.
So you stagger it depending on the time.
Exactly. Because I know going to MSP when I'm trying to get there for like maybe an 8 a.m. flight, it's all hell's breaking loose. There's cars quadruple parked. You can't navigate down the road to get to your gate of entry, So, and here's the other thing, too. I mean, it's caused a lot of reactions, apparently. But here's my question. Do they have to hire people specifically to monitor this, or are they going to ask the police or the security to monitor it? Because if they have to hire people, they're creating jobs.
That's one way to look at it, I guess. Yeah, that's very true.
So it makes the authorities look like they're doing something for the community.
Yeah, it's interesting because, as you say, it gets really complicated if you stagger the times, right? Because then it's going to be hard for people. Wait a minute, what time stretch are we in? This is the 1.5 minute time stretch, and then we're back to 3. It may be more trouble than it's worth, but I think we all have had the moments where our ability to get to the spot where we want to be dropped off is prevented by a couple that decides to basically turn it into a makeout session. And I certainly have been, moved from time to time when I was traveling a lot more to look in the direction of those two individuals and mutter something like, "Get a room!" which often does not do anything to slow them down. In fact, in some cases, it probably makes them, or go any faster, it probably makes them slow down even more.
Or maybe you create an actual lover's lane where people who need more than 3 minutes can go and occupy and hug
and you tax it
to their content.
And you tax it, right? Then you make a little extra money off of it, maybe to pay off a couple of the airport debts. It's a possibility.
If they're international flights, you can add tariffs to
it. There you go. Team Trump is in on the
if you're flying in from another country, you got to pay a tariff.
A tariff, it makes all the sense in the world. I like Clayton's idea. This is Clayton from Rochester for you. Dan, does this feel like a good year for Lavelle to be part of the Twins caravan? Forget Florida in February. He should be taking the temperature of Twins fans in Ely in January. This is a great idea, and I'm sure you'd be very happy to be a part of.
I've been to Ely before, actually, because of KFAN, because me and PA and Jeff Dubé went up there. There was they broadcasted live from the Fortune Bay Casino, and that was the site of one of my greatest runs of blackjack ever. I think I won $3,500 playing blackjack the night before we did the show. It just so happens that Ron Gardenhire and Ken Herb are having their snowmobile rally for ALS. So I got off the blackjack table with a bunch of money, walked into the middle of the banquet and slammed $200 down as a donation, and then turned around and went back to the tables and kept gambling.
How far back does this go?
It was the year the Bears played the Colts in the Super Bowl.
Oh my, so that's
was that 06?
Yeah, that's exactly. I think that's right. Yeah, I think it was 06. So it's
the other thing about that, I used that money to buy a refrigerator and have my entire house painted, and then the rest I lost betting on the Bears in the Super Bowl that year. So I remember that year vividly.
And you were feeling pretty good.
I've been to Ely, and I will say this, though, in recent years, times are changing, Dan, And now the Twins players, they're not that fired up about going into the frozen tundra in January. So they've been slowly curtailing Caravan. They're doing local stops, definitely local schools and things like that. They may run down to Rochester. I don't think they're going as far as Austin anymore. I don't think they're going as far as South Dakota or North Dakota. I could be wrong. I mean, if someone knows that the Twins are coming their way, please let us know on the hotline. But from what I've been told, they're scaling that thing back, and the travel is not as extensive as it used to be.
By the way, have you picked up any steam? We had the initial rush when the poll ad, when Joe came out with that release and that statement that we intend to sell the team, which is very different than saying you're going to sell the team. So have you gotten, now that it's sort of the adrenaline rush is off, what are you hearing? Are you hearing that they're getting some interesting, potentially legitimate offers? Are they going to play so hard to get that there's a real chance that they're not going to be able to sell the team no matter what they have declared? What kind of steam are you picking up?
I think the poll ads, from a business standpoint, have usually been so calculating that they probably would not decide to put the Explorer sale unless they had an idea who was going to bid on it. I think we threw all the names out there before, like Marty Davis, and wondering about A-Rod or Glenn Taylor, whoever loses that battle. Keep in mind that the owners would have to approve that sale. So for the NBA side, I think owners would be sympathetic toward Glenn if A-Rod and Laurie got the team, and the board of governors still have to approve the sale. They may show fealty to Glenn and vote it down. Now, if A-Rod and Laurie end up making a play at the Twins, let's not forget A-Rod served a 200-game suspension for violating the drug policy. How's that going to go over with the owners?
Yeah, right.
So there's tentacles there. One small thing that I ran past someone and they said it wasn't out of the question. Joe Polak could possibly still be part of like any ownership group going forward. This was a family decision. The rest of the family apparently is ready to move on. Joe maybe could have a small stake and take like a minority ownership role, a limited role, whatever, as part of the ownership group. So a lot of things going on there. There's a lot of due diligence going on. I don't know if we're going to learn of any hardcore offers right away. And this thing could take a year, man. So that's the one thing I found out this week that was so interesting, that if Joe wants to still have a hand in it, he may have it on a limited basis.
Which of the local prominent football teams are more likely to stub a toe this weekend? The Gophers at Rutgers or the Vikings at Jacksonville?
It was one of my notes for Sunday. I hate torturing Vikings fans, but this whole kicking thing, I moved here in 1998 was my first year in the Twin Cities. So the 99 team and the Gary Anderson missed field goal was just a star run of kicking calamities that have lasted for 20 years now. Well, is it 20? Yeah, over 20 years. And just when you think it's safe to watch your kicker kick again, Will Reichert goes down. So now you got a new kicker and a new long snapper. At least he's got some NFL experience. And Trevor Lawrence is out. It would be very interesting if somehow this game ends up being a one field goal difference, and it's going to come down to Mr. Romo trying to save the day. I think that's the last thing the Vikings fans want to see right now is that guy lining up to hit a game-winning kick. So I was thinking maybe the Vikings more so. The Gophers are in a row. They've won 4 straight games now.
Correct.
They beat a decent Illinois team. They were banged up. Their starting corners did play, but the one starter tapped out, I think, in the middle of the game. The other one got kicked out for targeting in the fourth quarter. So notice that's when Roseman did his best work with those guys were out. But you know what? You play the advantage. That's the game, But I give him credit. I give PJ credit for, changing his offensive philosophy and letting Roseman throw, because it looks like he takes care of the ball. He doesn't make careless decisions. He's got capable receivers. So, and defensively, it's weird, man. They gave up another. I think they've given up 10 runs of at least 20 yards this year, and they gave up a 29-yard touchdown run. But the defense still comes up with plays, and it's a solid secondary, and they don't get burned. So I like their chances against Rutgers and AKA tomorrow more so. I still think the Vikings are going to win, but you ask me who is more likely to stub their toe. I could see a Vikings calamity based because of the kicker.
Larry Mandela guy has checked in regarding who might get those jobs you mentioned to monitor the 3-minute rule at airports. If the New Zealand experiment is so popular that it gets imported here, they could hire nuns to monitor the 3-minute rule. I know in my youth they were very good at preventing makeout sessions. Keep room for the Holy Spirit. It's the way Larry Mandela guy puts it. So maybe that would be a little extra work that they could be interested in, possibly. Huh?
Yeah, that would actually slow down. I think that would definitely cut down on the time needed to hug when you've got a nun hovering over your shoulder.
Kind of intimidation factor. Yeah,
while you're embraced in a big goodbye hug. So that definitely could work. That's a great idea, Mr. Mondello guy.
We had both of the winter pro sports teams on the fan back-to-back last night, which is unusual but kind of fun. It was the Wolves early. They basically didn't really do much at all offensively or defensively until the second half, especially the fourth quarter, but then they did kind of turn a close game into a rout in Chicago against your Bulls. And then the Wild win again on the road in San Jose, California. Let's talk about the conditions of these two teams early, because I mean the Wolves have the pedigree of coming off a run to the conference finals, adding some interesting talent with a record they're kind of meandering thus far in terms of the record, but it's very early. They have a chance to win again tonight, playing a pretty lousy Portland team here, although it's the second night of a back-to-back. And then the Wild have continued. They got another victory last night, too. And I don't think it's outlandish at this point for fans of both teams to say, well, this might be an interesting winter across the board. An intriguing winter, not just for one of our winter sports teams, but potentially for both. Am I being too optimistic?
Not at all, especially after I watched the Wild a couple of times in person, and Gustafson has really made a difference in his level of play, and I think that's a big development. I don't know how many games Wallstedt's going to start this year, because it looks like Gus Bus is bouncing back. Bodie looks like he's going to have a terrific year. Rossi's taken off from where he was last year. They have a favorable early schedule, so they can stack up some wins here. I think they have the Blackhawks and Montreal this week, and then they are home against, well, they're at Chicago, they're home against Montreal, and then they're home a week from Sunday against the Dallas Stars. So that would be a meaty game. But I think you're right. I think the Wild, I'm not saying, right now, they're second most points in the conference behind Winnipeg, right?
Winnipeg's been ridiculous. We were just talking about that during the top five.
Yeah, they're going to. They're going to level off a little bit, but I don't think they're going to crumble and be the disaster they were last year. I like the way the young core is developing, and I like the fact that the goalie is stepping up his game, and I think it's going to be sustainable. I may have been a little premature in my column a couple of weeks ago when I was touting their fast start, but I just liked a lot of things I saw there. And the Wolves, I'm still going to wait about 22 games with them just to see how this new mix is going to work. He's got to figure out his rotation. I'm glad to see Jaden McDaniels score some baskets yesterday because he still is only averaging 9.9 points a game. And he needs to bring it offensively, or if I was Finchie, I would experiment with someone else in that spot and bring him off the bench because you can't have a starting player in the NBA average 9.9 points a game unless it's Dennis Rodman or Ben Wallace or someone like that. You know what I'm saying? So he's definitely got to get going. But when they're clicking, it looks like a lot of fun. It looks like a really fun team to watch. With Ant taking the shooting to another level, adding even 10 zone. I didn't realize Julius Randle was such a offensive facilitator. I mean, he's averaging 4.5 assists a game. That's pretty good for a big man. So he's got some new pieces to play with, and he said give us about 20 games to figure out what we are, and I think we're watching that process to take take place. But, definitely worst case scenario, they're one of the top 4 teams in the conference again, and hopefully better than that.
We've seen, I think, already some signs of what the offense can be, that it can be better, more versatile, certainly deeper, because you essentially traded one very good starter for 2 starters in Randall and DiVincenzo, even though Dante is going to probably most of the season be coming off the bench. The issue is you can't let it come at too much expense for your defense. Maybe you're not going to be the top defense again. Maybe that's hard to do with this group, but you don't want to fall too far, which they had. And fourth quarter against the Bulls, not a great team, not even with all their pieces. Their defense did finally tighten up. So I'm as curious as anybody to see, sort of where this thing goes and my hope originally was that a couple of the young kids might get a chance. I think that's clearly going to be hard now because Finchie's in a mode now where it sounds like, I got to get my top 8 to figure out how we want to play them together. So I think the experiment of playing more people has already kind of gone by the wayside, at least until they figure out who fits whom, with who well, and how do the pieces of our automatic top 7 players, certainly top 8 if you include Neal, by the way, who's been good again this year. I was down on him offensively, but he looks better offensively this year, and there is no denying what he can do defensively. That guy he's a tone setter defensively for this team.
I would like to see you interview him because I find him a rather interesting fellow. Because I was at media day and he started quoting Romans out of the Bible during his media session. It was something about getting better and improving or whatever, and I was kind of fascinated by that. And he has gotten better. The other thing, Dan, too, is interesting. Finchie's got Conley playing off the ball a little bit more.
Yes,
and I'm kind of curious to see how far he's going to run with that. And Conley has not gone off to a really good start shooting wise this year, so I don't know if he's just kind of tinkering a little bit to see what it looks like, just in case they get in some situations where he may have to play that role, or if he's going to dump it after a few more games. But I was kind of surprised to read and see that happen with Mike. So is he going to play tonight? Is he playing back-to-backs?
He is, as I understand it. He is going to play. Now his minutes may be limited, but I don't think he's sitting. That's the last I saw. There's no question, and Conley has raised it, and we're going to talk about it with him next time we have him on, that he's admitting, look, we got more facilitators than we did before, so I'm in a different role. He had a good shooting night, by the way, last night. He also, I think, had 12 assists. He had a good game last night, but I think it is a feeling out process for him because, let's face it, I don't think we think of Conley as, like a drop-dead, great, pure shooter. You look at him as, well, you're getting leadership, you're getting the guy who can run the show, you're getting all that experience, and he's admitting this is kind of a different role for him. And how it will play out and what he sort of settles into, what they are willing to get out of him or want to get out of him, it is one of the riddles that I think, one of the mysteries that has to be solved here probably the first quarter, first maybe third of the season.
Yeah, like I said, Finch said media day. He wanted 20 games or so to establish some sort of rotation and figure out how his team's going to play this year. So, but still, so far so good for the feeling out process here because they still look like one of the best teams in the West. Hey,
incidentally, you mentioned that you felt pretty good about that Bears Super Bowl bet, or you you lost the rest of the money, I think, betting on the Bears to beat the Colts. You were probably feeling pretty good after that opening kickoff return, right, by Hester? You're going, we're in business, correct?
That was probably the highest moment, one of the highest moments of my sports fan existence when he ran back that kick. I mean, people were throwing their beers up in alleys, Shrink wrap guy was getting his hair doused with beer. It was just a great moment, and then everything. Yeah. And after that too, I believe that Peyton Manning threw an interception on the Colts' first drive, so the Bears actually had the ball up 7-0. And that was the high point of the game. Yeah,
unfortunately, that in the rain, and it sort of went downhill from there. Unfortunately, what's the Sunday column about?
On Monday in Toronto, not Lavelle, Toronto, the National Hockey Hall of Fame is having its Hall of Fame induction ceremony. And that includes Chrissy Wendell-Pole and Natalie Darwitz.
Nice.
So I'm writing about them for Sunday. I actually got a hold of Natalie this morning, live from MSP Airport while she was on her way to Toronto for the event. So we chatted up a little bit. So I wrote something on those two because, they were playing. There were girls growing up playing against boys and sharpening their game, getting banged around, getting knocked off their skates by boys, and they ended up being they were like the leaders of the, girls/women's hockey movement, because by the time they were done, people were paying attention to the sport like never before. They were part of that first wave, man. And I did not know that Chrissy Wendell scored over 200 goals in 2 years in high school. That's just ridiculous to me. And I think Darwitz scored 75 as an eighth grader. Something like that. It was just, they were putting up just ridiculous jaw-dropping numbers, man. So I talked to her about that a little bit, and she's an ambassador for the Wild now. She's actually landed a new gig after the PWHL bit kind of expired on her. So it was a nice talk.
Hey, one last question that is more inside baseball related. I'm sure you saw the story that Joel Embiid was suspended for 3 games for supposedly shoving a Philadelphia Inquirer columnist, I believe. They argued about something that the columnist had written that Embiid did not like. What is the give us, if you can, off the top of your head, the 1 or 2 tensest moments for you in either a clubhouse or a locker room, whatever the level, that I would assume may not rise to that level. Maybe it did. Maybe you were shoved once. I don't know. Anything come to mind in the Lavelle journalistic career?
Wasn't shoved. One time I was really caught off guard by someone's anger. Actually, it was Torrey Hunter.
Oh.
And it wasn't my fault. The Twins had clinched the playoffs. I'll try to be brief with this. They were still playing the Royals. Mm-hmm. Torrey was quoted in the paper saying, "Are you guys going to relax?" "Oh, no, we're going to win tomorrow 14-0. And so Torrey gets on base the next game, and Jeff Kempcher is at first base, and Kempcher tells Torrey, watch your head. Because they didn't like what he said. So after the game, Torrey's hunting for who the hell wrote what I said? That was off the record. Well, who the hell? And some jackass said Lavelle did, and actually Lavelle did it. It was Joe Christensen.
Oh.
So I walk into the clubhouse. I talk to Gardy. I'm walking into the players area. I get intercepted by, I think it was Dustin Morris. And he was like, "You better watch out, Torrey wants to talk to you."
Oh, boy.
And next thing you know, I hear a stream of expletives. He's screaming at me. He's calling me all kinds of names. He said, "Why would you write that? MF. I was like, "What are you talking about, man?" I said, "Well, what?"
Oh, man.
At one point, I said, "Whatever I did, I apologize." Because I'd never seen Torrey that mad,
Right, right.
And then Jerry White came in and kind of separated us because Torrey was in my face, and there was a cooling off period, and Torrey calls me over, and he was like, "Look, man, I had to get you. It was a bad look. The Royals were ready to hit me in the head. I had to say something about it. I'm sorry." I said, "Well, Torrey, I don't remember writing that, to be honest with you." And then Jerry White comes over. "You two need to talk this out before you erupt, Torrey, the next time."
The peacemaker, Jerry White, yeah.
Yeah. So as it turned out, Torrey finds out 20 minutes later that it wasn't me who wrote it, but it was Joe Christensen. So he says, "Hey, I'm going to spend the next 7 days apologizing for you." I said, No worries, man. I get it." And he said, "But can you tell Joe Christensen I don't need to talk to him?"
So he blames you for something you didn't do, but he still wants you, if you can, to help out and convey the message to Joe that Torrey doesn't want to have anything to do with him. You can't even make that up.
I just want to make it clear that the opening moments of that verbal assault,
that's tough.
I was caught off guard. I was not expecting it, so I was kind of in defense mode at that point.
Well, when you're not ready for it, right? That's when, because sometimes you can say, "Okay, I wrote some. I know there's trouble or I'm being warned. There's going to be," but when it kind of comes out of nowhere like that it can be very difficult to be prepared for that at any point.
I read the Philadelphia writer's story, and he made reference to, I think, a brother who passed away as a child or something, and a couple of people he's lost along his way. It did not fit with the rest of the story. I thought it was forced, and I would like to think that if I submitted something like that, it'd probably be edited out because it just didn't seem like it was a fit. Because basically, it went from there into just questioning, why isn't he playing? Is he working hard? Is he out of shape? And the writer was trying to kind of shape it as of, he keeps saying he wants to play in the memory of these people he's lost, but what would they think today? It was kind of along those lines, know?
Right.
And I thought the thing was forced. I could see why MB would be a little ticked. And I don't know, I think writing something like that without even having a conversation with the player, I think that's kind of a no-go zone when you start mentioning family members in that form. I think I would have approached him and said, or maybe try to figure out a way to bring it up to him, but I don't think the writer did. And I'm pretty sure Embiid's probably hiding and not speaking to the media, which doesn't help either.
No, it's a combination.
But when I read it, I read it and it was like something I would not write this. That's what I was thinking when I was reading it.
Thanks for the time, as always. We will chat next week.
Sounds good, man.
Be good, Lavelle. That is Lavelle E. Neal III. A couple of items to wrap up our final 30. We're going the distance. There's no summer hours anymore on Friday. Come on, man. So we're going till 6:30. I'm saving a couple texts I want to get to, and we'll touch upon perhaps even an A-section topic or two before we wrap things up at 6:30.
Inflation Vacation is back on KFAN. We have 9 chances for you to win $1,000 every weekday. That's every hour, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. To enter keywords, learn more at KFAN.com. Inflation Vacation is powered by 2 men in a junk truck.
But it ain't. Wish you could be with me. There would be no problem.
I've gotten a number of post-election emails that all are variations of this same theme. I'll read you one to sort of maybe capture the essence of it. Are you lefties still crying at KFAN? Do you and Kessler need tissues? Need a day off like the baby college students? And I feel like I've let that 715 guy and several other people down because it seems as if it's important for them to attach or connect with me a reaction that I haven't had, that I have not displayed publicly or privately. And so I'm sorry if I haven't blubbered. I'm sorry if I spent a prominent section of the show yesterday in the first hour mocking and ridiculing what is taking place on many college campuses regarding canceling classes. And so it's a good lesson of the political, at least online reality in which we will continue to live, no matter whether Biden's running the country or Donald J. Trump is running the country either, that the truth for a lot of people just doesn't matter. So if they need to attach a certain reaction to you, whether you actually have had that reaction, by God, I know that's what you're doing. You're crying. It tells me more about those individuals who should be concentrating on their victory, not worrying about a reaction that I have not come close to conveying. Been doing this show a long time. I don't know how much longer I'm going to do it. I mean, I hope I can do it for a while. I'm not ready to leave yet. But I have survived one Trump administration, continue to do the show. Often he provided us with some wonderful material, mocked and ridiculed some of the things he said and did, actually defended other things that he did, saying that this is not worth getting deranged over. And so if, I'm fortunate enough to stay healthy and they, want me around forever, maybe I'll still be here at the end of this next administration. I don't know. But this idea that it's you got to look in the mirror. Is he curled up are they curling up in the fetal position? Is he okay? Is he crying? Has he been moaning and whining about the setback? No. Day one, I didn't back away, and I'm not going to back away from my belief that it's a mistake and that it will end up doing some significant damage to the country. But that's immaterial at this point. What I've also said was, and spent more of the time doing, both on radio and on TV tonight on Enough Said, Fox 9, late starts tonight because of sports preempting us, but I think it's going to be on all weekend as well, is that the Democrats need to look in the mirror. And the Democrats need to stop deluding themselves and into thinking that when you lose this badly or this thoroughly, that it's something you can slough off and you can blame on other people and everybody's stupid and everybody's racist and everybody's misogynist, etc. That if you want to do your purity tests, in the end, you're going to probably put yourself in an even worse position. And there are some smart Democrats, I like to call them old-fashioned liberals, who have made that case already and have been willing to do it. So again, to those hoping that I would spend every waking minute post-election crying in my beer and saying, woe is me, and how are we going to move forward from this point on, I apologize. Because I clearly have not given you what you want. The sad part is, in your world, that doesn't even seem to matter. In your world, you're still assuming and assigning me that emotion, whether I have given you even a morsel of it in the days following Election Day, Decision Day on Tuesday. Was it November 6th? I think that was the date. Let's come back and wrap up the show. Remind you of a good conversation we had with Sean Salisbury today. Maybe a little bit more Vikings discussion as well before we wrap things up.
It's the Bumper to Bumper Show Wrap.
Well, it's the age-old question. The age-old question when it comes to the Vikings taking on a team they're supposed to beat, whether it's home or it's road. Do we dare to call the game loser-proof? And is it the kiss of death every time we do? The truth is, it's not the kiss of death. We tend to remember the times where it is the kiss of death, but we've called many games loser-proof, and in fact, the Vikings have taken care of business and they've won them. Do we classify this one as loser-proof? I don't think I can in all good conscience. I could do it because it's fun and it's the bit. I don't think I can because pro football, we've learned is weird. I think the Vikings took some steps in the right direction against the Colts, but I don't think you came away from that game going, oh, they're back. And as odd as this sounds, again, for the second straight week, I'll say the quarterback who's going to play, or apparently is going to play, I think might end up being a little bit more trouble. In this case, Mac Jones, not necessarily because he's better, but because he might be more interested and motivated because he hasn't had to participate in a dreadful Jacksonville season and a dreadful Jacksonville offense. So maybe, he says, hey, this is my auditioning for trying to get a shot at another job. On the other hand, just wanting to do something doesn't necessarily mean you're capable of doing it or you're good enough to do it. So I would call this borderline loser-proof, which is not a very strong stand to take. I get it. It's a bit wishy-washy. I can't go full loser-proof unless I'm just doing it for the bit because we've seen weirder things happen than the Vikings going to a place like Jacksonville. Oh, and it just doesn't have to be about the Vikings. Other teams as well going as a superior team, better record, lots more to play for, and going to some place and losing. So I'm not going to go there, although I did pick the Vikings to cover. What are we going with, 6.5?
6.5.
Yeah, I think they're going to cover. I think Salisbury agreed.
Gerby did not.
Gerby did not. And I think Salisbury also said, his homestanding Houston Texans are hosting the Lions, and that he said he thought it was going to be a closer game than some people think, but that he kind of viewed it as a touchdown victory for the Lions as well, which is sort of how I see it. So everybody be watching. There's no question about that. It's an important football weekend for the Vikings simply because you are in that part of the schedule where you can fatten up on the record You want to have some victories in the tank for when you get back to playing within the division. And, you maybe cling to the hope that perhaps Houston finally plays as well as they played last year. Maybe the Lions have an off game, right? I mean, they're not unbeatable. And you gain a game in the standings there, although I think the Lions have a schedule that's even softer than ours in the weeks that follow. And then, of course, on Saturday, all this stuff will be on the fan on Saturday, tomorrow. The Gophers, I think the key reason for them to really want this one is not only do you get to 5 straight wins, but it also, I think, adds excitement to what's going to end up being probably your signature game for this season, and that is hosting Penn State, right? Now, Penn State lost again last week. I think they're back at home this week and are likely to win. I don't think they're a great team, though. So maybe you look upon that as an opportunity. Then if you can finish the season basically with a winning streak, it's a far cry from what we saw here last year when the Gophers lost their last 4 regular season games. And guess what? You could end up in an okay bowl. I don't know. Maybe you go back to Nashville. Maybe you get one of the Florida bowls. Who's to say? I don't think, as one of our texters suggested, that you got much of a chance to getting into the college football playoff. I think that's a bit of a reach, even if we go down, if we end up, finishing the season on a winning streak.
It would be a great bit going back to the Vikings is next time I see you, just on Sunday, just spend the hour declaring it loser proof.
Now that's true.
And then you could go,
people get
I didn't say.
Yeah, people do get, they take it very personally because they actually think we have some influence, which we really don't. I think it borders on religious. It's that superstition thing where you go, well, you're jinxing it. If you say it's loser proof, now we know there's a good chance that the Vikings are going to find a way to lose. Like on the plane down, the conversation is, did Barreiro call the game loser proof during the prediction segment on Friday? They have no idea we exist, most of them. And they certainly pay no attention to what we might have predicted from that standpoint. But the average rube, who does listen, I guess, thinks of it differently and doesn't. It's the old, don't tempt the football gods by calling it loser proof, because then automatically just inexplicable things are going to happen to us.
Well, you know what else it is, too? It's the opportunity to tweet you and say, I gotcha.
Yeah, pretty much.
You said.
Yeah. I was alluding to that earlier.
Yeah.
It's exactly it. So that might be some of it, too. So tonight we got Vikings programming early, correct?
Yes.
And then what do we have, Dan Patrick night? Because we don't have any. Oh, no.
For a little bit.
Are the Wolves on the fan?
No. The Wild are on the fan.
Oh, I forgot the. Yeah,
they're in
Wild
Anaheim.
In action.
Another dead arena with no one there.
A late game.
Yes.
Obviously, but we're not going back to back on this occasion. So the Wolves, if you're interested, they are at home against Portland. We play Portland 3 times in the next week. I'm not making that up. That'll be on the Timberwolves channel. The Wild, the still hot Wild, will be in Anaheim. Is that another dead arena? Is that true?
Oh, yeah.
Bad?
There's no atmosphere in Anaheim.
What's happened?
They're just not a good team.
Once upon a time it was. There was. Not anymore, huh?
But the Sharks is more once upon a time they were good, but the Ducks are just a bad team.
Yeah, that's not good at all.
Play with your food territory tonight.
It could be that. Yeah. You're exactly right. And as I said, if you missed our conversation with Sean Salisbury, that was between 4 and 4:30. We did have predictions between about 3:40 and 4 o'clock, and Gerby told us that he is on his way to Disney World for vacation, because this is bye week, of course, for the Green Bay Packers. And good stuff from Ben Gessling between 4:30 and 5, not to mention Lavelle, including on that controversial question of how long is the fair amount of time to allow people to say goodbye to one another at airport drop-off. New Zealand Airport is now experimenting with a 3-minute rule. That's the max. Now, I got a couple of texters who say they're either cab drivers or Uber drivers, and that they think 3 minutes is more than enough. That in their experience, people are basically saying goodbye quicker, like a minute to a minute and a half. So I don't know. Maybe we can even cut it down more, and maybe all of that would help facilitate better traffic flow at busy airports, especially at busy times. We appreciate you watching today. We appreciate you listening today. And we do expect, as I said, a very controversial 1-hour edition of Sermons on Sunday morning. That'll be between 9 and 10 leading into the Vikings pregame show. We will review Gophers, Rutgers, and certainly do more previewing of Vikings, Jacksonville. And I got a hunch there might be some more Hoosier Hotline if they knock off the Wolverines at home to go to 10-0. Enjoy the weekend. We'll talk to you on Sunday morning, 9 a.m.
I'll be there whenever you want me. I'll be there whenever.
Wear pants and not wear pants. You can do whatever.
I'll be